This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good Erev Yom Tov, it's Erev Shavuos, and I have to share with you a thought. And as I was about to say it, I was preparing the introduction is that we're working on the Sefer on Rav Meir, and I know you're saying, okay, here we go again. And the truth is, this was going to be an unrelated thought to Shavuos, but it was going to be perhaps the closing chapter of the Sefer. Last night we gave a shir on the relationship between karbanos and banim lamakom. And my plan was, I wanted to speak about why Sinas Chinam is such a destructive force that it caused the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Because if you think about it, Sinas Chinam in the totem pole of Lavin does not seem to be so severe. There's no chi of Misa, there's no chi of Kares, it's only a regular lav. It's a lav she'in by Maisa. Why is it so corrosive and destructive that it brought about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash? And then as I was about to give the shir, literally, Hashem gave me a matana toiva that this idea is very much connected to the Yom Tov of Shavuos as well. So let's begin as follows. There is another dimension, there's another midah and mitzvah to be able to be reckoned and considered banim lamakom, and that is Achdus. Where do we see this? How do we know this? Well, if in the very pasuk, banim atem l'Hashem lekeichem lo yisisgoidedu, which the Gemara in Yevamos darshans, al tasu agudos, don't make different groups, breakaway groups, don't be disparate from each other. Well, that means in order to be banim la'amakom, you have to make sure you're lo yisisgoidedu. In fact, Reb Chaim Falaji, in Mareches Habeis, in the Sefer Nefesh Chaim, Mareches Habeis, Ois Mem Daled, the Sif Yud, he says that only a Yid that has the midah of tzedakah and milas chasadim is considered banim la'amakom, like the pasuk implies. Banim atem l'Hashem lekeichem lo yisisgoidedu lo yisasu agudos. Likewise, Reb Chaim Falaji says in the same Sefer Nefesh HaChaim, in Mareches Hayud, Ois Kuf Tesvav, that Klal Yisrael, even when we're thousands and tens of thousands, we're called Lashon Yachid. B'ni! Shalaches b'ni v'yavduni. B'ni b'chayr Yisrael. Ki beno yisi li avi. Because of Hashem's great love. However, l'chayra, says Reb Chaim Falaji, we're only given this appellation when we're ba'achdus gamor. When we're ba'achdus gamor, we're called b'ni, and we're going to come back to that in our conclusion. So we see that Shalom and Achdus is a prerequisite to be reckoned banim la'amakom. In fact, in the Sefer Devash Hasadeh of Reb Doiv Bar Amud, he brings an Ois Kovav in the name of the Rav HaKadosh of Buchach, the Eishal Avram. We know there's a title in Tanakh, Avi Ad Sar Shalom. What does that mean, Avi Ad Sar Shalom? He says, we know when we do Rutzaner Shalmakom, we're banim. When we don't do Rutzaner Shalmakom, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we're avodim. That's what we daven im kabanim im kavadim. So Hashem is either our father or our master, our sar. Avi, whether God's our father, ad, until sar, he's our master, what does it depend on? Shalom. Avi, ad, sar, depending on whether Rebbe is going to be acting as a father or your master, that's shalom. It's dependent on shalom. If we have the midah of shalom, then he's our av and we're banu. If we don't have shalom, if we're not ba'achdus, then Hashem is our sar and we don't have the maila of banim. So now we understand so beautifully, because just a little while ago we explained that in order to build a Beis Hamikdash, we have to have the status of banim. Like Hashem tells David through Nasan Hanavi, Shlomo will build a Beis Hamikdash, V'ani eyeloi la'av, v'hu yeli leben. From which we derive that in order to build a Beis Hamikdash, you have to have the status of a ben. As Reb Chaim Falaji in Mareches Habeis, Ois Yotes, Ois Yotes, it's actually Ois Mem Dalet, and within Mem Dalet it's Ois Yotes. He brings that to build the Beis Hamikdash, that demonstrates we're banim la'amakom. That's derived from the Medrash Rabbah and Shmais Rabbah Lamed Daled Gimel, that Hashem says, make a house for me, I'm your father, you're my children, I need to live with you. So in order for there to be a concept of Mikdash, we have to have the status of banim. So therefore, we see, and this gives us a new insight into why Achdus is a prerequisite for the Beis Hamikdash and why Sinas Chinam destroys the Beis Hamikdash. It's not a punishment. It's just we can only have a Beis Hamikdash if we're banim la'makam, and if we have Sinas Chinam, then we're not banim la'makam. We're avodim. We can't have a mikdash. So Sinas Chinam doesn't bring a punishment of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, but it does, the possibility of mikdash is not even feasible because we're no longer banim la'makam. And now we can understand why Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Hahar. Why Achdus was a prerequisite to Kabbalas HaTorah. Why? Why did we have to be Vayichan Sham Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad according to this principle? That we're only Banim La'Makayim if we're Ba'achdus. If we're not Ba'achdus, not Banim La'Makayim. We know, we've learned so many times that the only way the Rebbeinu Shem was able to give us the Torah is because we're banim, because otherwise the malachim have a good argument. The malachim should say, God, you're giving away something, but there's a halachic requirement of yasisa hayasher v'atav. You have to first give it to the neighbor. So malachim said, God, we're your neighbors. How could you give it to Israel? So what is the taina? So we said from the Shach on Yeredeya and from the Shita Mekabel says that the way we went up the malachim is because even though they're neighbors, but we're banim. So therefore, a prerequisite to Kabbalas HaTorah is Vayichan Sham. We have to be Ba'achdus. So since we have to be Ba'achdus, that explains why, in fact, that was a prerequisite to Kabbalas HaTorah, because through the midah of Kishecha B'Lev Echad, we attain the status of Banim, and we could ask the Malachim, and we could be Zoicha to be Mekabel the Torah. So the Achdus was a prerequisite to Kabbalas HaTorah, to Binyan Beis Hamikdash, and it all depends from Avi until Sar. It's Ad Shalom. So Mevarich everybody with a Gutin Yom Tov, a Gebench to Yom Tov, Chakosh Sameach, Shamoy Zama Yitain, Hashem Yevarech Hasamay Bashalom.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.